Where does the time fly? I'm telling you, it just takes off on us all the time. But I have somebody I want to interview right now, which is a very special guest. You know, we have been dreading and talking and predicting that the fourth turning is going to come with a period of persecution. It looks as though the American church almost got a free ride. You have persecution in China. You have persecution in certainly in North Korea. You've got persecution in the Middle East. And there, you know, and I read statistics sometimes about the 200,000, 300,000 martyrs in Africa, Boko Haram killing bishops, killing Christians. And we sit here, we don't even think about it because the news media doesn't cover it and we don't talk about it. But it is real, and it is so real, it's a spiritual thing that hates Christianity. But when you see it start to show up in North America, when you see it in the cradle of liberalism. I remember when Canada, in my mind, was where you wanted to go to be a draft dodger. It was kind of where you could go to get, you know, legalized marijuana. They were like so safe, you worried if they would ever survive as a democracy. What you didn't realize is that that was actually the shallowness of their culture, and that if the church didn't occupy the culture, it could flip on a dime and become like National Socialism, just like Germany. It could empower these Trudeaus, these children who now take over government, to be able to use the police and use the courts in order to impose their own weird wokeness, their own vocabulary and perversion on the entire nation. And good law-abiding Canadians are so much like Americans. They don't want to do anything wrong. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to rock the boat. And so they submit like lambs to the slaughter, to the control. Unless you exert yourself, you're taken over. Well, here's a pastor. Because of his background, seeing what the communists did in Poland, he has a personal awareness, like Jordan Peterson, about propaganda and Marxism, why he stood up against BLM when it got into the university and tried to make him call people men who are women. And he refused to do that, and he almost got locked up in Canada. Here's a pastor who sees what's coming and refused to compromise. We all need to know who he is. He is the early warning message from heaven to the United States, because in Canada, he's had his house burned. In Canada, he's been arrested. In Canada, he's had his physical body attacked. In Canada, he's been threatened by municipalities and mayors. In Canada, he has become the object of a reformation. Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, welcome to Firewall. What can you tell us about what I just described? I mean, am I exaggerating this thing, or what do you see?
No, the attack on Christianity is very, very real. And of course, they're cracking on anyone that becomes a symbol of freedom, anyone that dares to speak, anyone that dares to oppose the corruption. I have been exposing corruption in government for the past 16 years. So we have become a symbol of resistance, if you will, a solidarity movement. And as you can tell, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. I've seen what is the power of the wannabe tyrants, but I also have seen the power of the unified people, and God was on their lips. I remember to this day when I was a kid growing up behind the Iron Curtain, I've seen people, hundreds of thousands, walking with the cross, and of course over 1 million people that came to see John Paul II when he invited the Holy Spirit to come upon the land of Poland, and 1 million people said, "Yes, God, come to our nation. We want you here." And that was the beginning of the end for the communists, because as you know, communists hate God. They want to eliminate God. They want to eliminate the freedom of religion. And let me say something to you. There is not one country on earth that does not have freedom of religion, that is democracy. Show me one nation that is prohibiting people from worshiping their God, that is democracy. Those are tyrants. Those are wicked, evil people, and they're coming for you. Don't you think for a second that just because they came for us Canadians, they're not coming for you Americans? Poland, from 1945, had a constitution, but no one respected it. The communists, the wannabe tyrants, do not care about the constitution. They do not care about your human rights. They're after your business. They're after your families. They're after your children. Propaganda, propaganda, propaganda. What it matters is just propaganda, Joseph Goebbels said during the time of the Nazis. And everything they did, you got to remember, was lawful according to them. Okay? And Hitler was democratically elected. So don't you think for a second this cannot happen to you? It's happening already.
Yeah, you could democratically elect someone like we got right now, like a Joe Biden, who looks like, he's a safe old grandpa. Meanwhile, he's only half there mentally, and he's got an ego that wants to outdistance Barack Obama, who was his predecessor. So he's going to be more radical than him, and Obama's giving him all the plays he's got to do. It's dangerous. But what I want to focus on here is they used the pandemic, they used the health situation, which we're finding out now had a mortality rate that was lower than an epidemic is. So they were exaggerating, or allowed themselves to exaggerate, the danger of this thing. Now the masks are coming off, and the social distancing is being proved to be a real farce in terms of science. But when you give that power to a government that wants power, it doesn't question the science. It literally, we're finding out, it lies about the science, it fakes the science, and the scientists become part of this of the deception because they get funding for what they do. Now you stand up against this thing, and it really becomes almost like a totalitarian health regime. And what did they do? They started telling you. They came to your church basically to shut you down because what? You were not socially distancing, or what was the problem?
They wanted to make sure if I'm preaching wearing a mask. And I mean, that's the ridiculous situation that we're facing right now. You got Walmarts with hundreds of people, you got IKEAs, you got Costco's with thousands of people, shoulder to shoulder. That's perfectly legal, but a grocery store down the street, that's a hazard. That's a danger to humanity. What is happening right now, people have to realize why they're coming against the churches, because historically speaking, when you look at the solidarity movement in Poland, that's a thing that is dear to my heart because I grew up seeing it, unfolding in front of my eyes. They were meeting in churches. Churches has always been a hub of resistance because people come together, they're not brainwashed. They understand what's going on. They're free people. They want to remain free. And a free man is always a danger to someone that wants to enslave you. And that's just pretty much what it is. So they're cracking on physical distancing, social distancing, the churches, because they don't want people to exchange information. Right now, this is the biggest fight against the truth. Because when the information is being exchanged, and in the churches facilities where we come by the hundreds and thousands of people, that information is being exchanged, and they don't want that. They don't want the people to know what's really going on. They don't want the people to know the truth, because the truth sets the captives free. When you go back, historically speaking, the suppression of the truth, or the information, if you will, has always been something that you look forward before the dictatorship takes over. Before people like Mao Zedong, Joseph Stalin, and Adolf Hitler, and others like him want to take over. So we have to be very, very, vigilant right now and more aggressive to push this, because if we don't rise up right now, and I mean, right now they're arresting pastors and removing any opposition. Do you know that protests have been declared just 2 weeks ago illegal in Canada? Illegal. So you cannot even protest them anymore. They now made a ruling that you can do protests, but you have to be physically distanced and you got to wear a mask and all that nonsense. So it's a serious stuff because it's coming to America.
So protest has been made illegal, but the Protestant church is actually out of the protest. So
I know.
It's almost like saying Christianity is illegal. So think about this: the right to assemble, the freedom of assembly, stuff that we take for granted. The reason why in our country this was put into a Bill of Rights, the right to be able to assemble, is because tyranny doesn't want you having a meeting. Because if you can have a meeting, you can organize. That's why organized religion is always the enemy of the atheistic state, because they are a religion. And their religion is the religion of no God, and we are God. And the church is saying, you're not God. God Almighty rules over men. So these two inevitably in every communist socialist nation come into collision. And in our case in North America, if the church doesn't wake up, our right to assemble is going to be determined either by the next virus that they cook up potentially to release, or it'll be hate speech. Because before the pandemic, what they were going to use in Canada was whether or not you were willing to speak what is government doctrine on sexuality and gender identity. And what the leftists would do is they'd send people to your church, like they do to a baker, to force the issue in order to see if you comply or lock you up. That's how insidious this is. I'm going to hold you over, Arthur, for the last segment. We normally have to take a break. We have to take a break in 30 seconds. But what I want you to talk about is we have to be bold as lions. This is a spiritual battle. I believe the Great Awakening is happening in the United States is a political awakening against the power structures that the devil is trying to occupy with his own people. And it's a spiritual awakening because if the church realizes who it is, I think there's a great harvest. And I want to talk to you about spiritual awakening in the United States. And when we come back, talk to us about being bold as lions and what God is doing.
It's a new platform called Liftable. It's the place where I can give the uncensored news and Christian worldviews. We're going there and we're forming a whole new entity called The Underground. Meet me in the Underground on Liftable TV.
For more great content, be sure to tune in at liftable.tv/underground.